Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate your patience, and we'd like to get started now. My name is Sheila McElhenney. I'm here with Darlene Wigton, who is the other program coordinator of this afternoon's event. Welcome to Woburn's Road to the Revolution. What you'll be seeing is a number of scenes portrayed by our reenactors, and I want to thank them for giving of their time and talent to this wonderful program. The way the program will start is there'll be a first scene with the women's petition here, which will be right here, and then from here we'll break down into tour groups, and you'll be guided down the Battle Road by the first tour will be led by Sue Ellen Holland, and then the second tour will be led by Joe Brown, and the third tour will be led by Melissa Davidson Kyle. So hopefully you enjoy this afternoon's program, and we'll start off with the women's petition. Thank you very much.
In 1774, the British Parliament passed laws known as the Intolerable or the Coercive Acts in an attempt to suppress the unrest in the colonies. In response, the Sons of Liberty led a call to again boycott British imports, and the Continental Congress drew up terms to impose economic sanctions against Great Britain if the acts were not repealed by December of 1774. Non-importation agreements signed by patriots and enforced through societal peer pressure meant that imported cloth and other goods would soon be in short supply. To prepare for this, the women in Woburn and in towns all about the colonies were making plans to spin, weave, dye, and sew their own fabric at home to provide clothing for their families, but they needed spinning wheels and other supplies. In March of 1775, a group of Woburn ladies gathered to prepare a petition which many would sign and ask to be delivered to the Massachusetts Provincial Congress, which contained their solution to finance their efforts. Included in this group are Ruth Baldwin. She was the mother of Major Loami Baldwin, who led the Woburn militia to Lexington. Lydia Thompson. She was the wife of Samuel Thompson, a member of the Woburn militia. Phoebe Thompson.
Right now.
She's the wife of Daniel Thompson, Samuel's brother, who was killed in the fighting on April 19th. Ruth Pierce. She was the mother of loyalist Benjamin Thompson and a cousin to Daniel and Samuel. And Abigail Wyman.
Welcome and come in. You are just in time. We're about to hear another reading of the petition. I fear we have one in our company who is still uncertain. Some of the more patriotic among us are trying to convince her to sign.
One of us has asked for the petition to be reread. Although our new provincial Congress may not have the blessing of our current king. God save King George.
God save the king.
I assure you that our petition to that Congress is not treasonous. Lydia, please start reading.
To the honorable gentlemen, the House of Delegates, for the province of Massachusetts Bay, in provincial Congress assembled by adjournment the Cambridge to Concord in the county of Middlesex on Wednesday the 22nd day of March 1775. The petition of subscribers, we, the female inhabitants of the town of Woburn and county aforesaid, humbly showeth that your petitioners, being greatly alarmed at the many bold attempts of the British to reduce this devoted province to a state of the most abject slavery, do esteem it our duty to exert our efforts to defeat all the plans of our enemies and to render their projects to enslave us abortive.
Slavery, you say? That's a very strong word and accusation you make against Parliament. It may not be direct treason, but it certainly overstates the case. And may Providence preserve us from true knowledge of true slavery.
Your petitioners, from a just sense of duty, have come to full determination to totally abstain from the use of all India teas, so long as the same shall be attended with a duty or tax for the purpose of enslaving America, and to refrain all superlative in dress until the acts and parts of acts of the British Parliament enumerated by the Grand American Congress shall be totally repealed. The Congress, in great wisdom in their August Assembly, strongly enjoined all merchants, traders, and others not to import any good, wares, or merchandise from any part of Great Britain or Ireland till said acts and parts of acts are repealed. It therefore becomes necessary to encourage and promote our own manufacturers as much as possible. Your petitioners humbly pray your patronage and encouragement in this laudable, necessary undertaking. It was with the utmost regret that your petitioners are constrained to say that too many men are guilty of a very great misspence of time at taverns and tippling houses, and expense of money laid out for rum and other spirituous liquors, which ought to have been expended for materials for the women to manufacture goods for the support of their families.
Mrs. Pierce, I trust we have your agreement there.
Yes, for certain. Please continue reading, Abigail.
Your petitioners pray a speedy remedy for this great and prevailing evil, and humbly recommend and submit the following to the consideration of his honorable Congress. That you would, in your great wisdom, to cause an excise to be laid on all spirituous liquors, especially on rum, related to this province in such a way and manner as you shall think most effectual to prevent the present excessive use and abuse of these articles of luxury, and that the net proceeds of the same may be appropriated to the encouragement manufactures in this town and province by way of bounty to those of us that shall produce the most and best clothes and other goods of various kinds, and request your aid and assistance in this important affair, as we have sacrificed our favorite teas at the altar of liberty for the good of the community.
Come, ladies. If you agree and support our petition but have not signed, please sign it now. We need a great many signatures to gain the attention of the Massachusetts Bay Congress. So please, step up to the cause by signing it with us.
Dear sisters, some in our family favor the crown and would be very much displeased if I were to sign this. What say you?
It's true that some of our families favor the crown and are not going to approve of this petition, but I say follow your own heart and mind as I have done. Sign it because it's the right and just thing to do. None of us favor the crown, but we do, however, favor our freedom.
Oh, dear me. What will my eldest son say if I sign this? What will my friends say if I do not? And what will posterity say?
Are there any among you, ladies, who would like to sign our petition? They are all shy out there today. We, in fact, have a petition for you to sign.
I'll sign it.
Gratitude is with you.
You are a brave woman.
Please step up over here and show your support for the cause of liberty.
Whoops, and there goes my receipt.
It's pretty cute.
Sign right here, this petition right here. Others of you are also brave. Right down here, we're all signing here. All the names are there to see.
So I'll just do this one last line and then we'll see.
Oh,
we have another one.
oh, we have young signers. Pretend signing.
Okay, we just pretend, right?
Okay. But I think we could have young signers.
There we go.
The female inhabitants,
I like that. Do you want to
Had to
pretend?
be over 18.
Oh, no, we are.
Oh, all right. All right.
By the time you grow up, it'll be a better country. A different country. Thank you.
The seat of science
heavens and earth's broad mistress roam. Where now are all their glories, we scarce can find a tomb. Then guard your rights, Americans, nor stoop to lawless sway. Oppose, 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 oppose for North America. We led fair freedom hither, and lo, the desert smiled. A paradise of pleasure now opened in the wild. Your harvest, bold Americans, no power shall snatch away. Preserve, preserve, preserve your rights in free America. Torn from a world of tyrants beneath this western sky, we formed a new dominion, a land of liberty. The world shall own we're freemen here, and such will ever be. Huzzah, 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 for love and liberty.
My name's Sue Ellen Holland. I'm a member of the Woburn Historical Commission and the Historical Society. I just want to warn you as we're walking, this is it's a woodsy road, you know, it's uneven. Be careful, watch your step. There could be, you know, rocks in the road, it could be a little bit muddy. Just keep in mind you're walking through the woods, so watch your step. As I said, just keep an eye on the ground, on the terrain, so that nobody's tripping or anything. So this road that you're walking on right now used to be the main road from, say, Woburn Center all the way over to Lexington. The current Lexington Street and Russell Street, they did not exist. So this was called Saw Pit Lane, and the direction that it took if you're from Woburn was basically the direction that the militiamen came in. They all organized under Colonel Loami Baldwin. When the alarm went out on April 19th for militiamen, they met at the Fowl Tavern, which was approximately across the street from Everett Street on Main Street. It does not exist anymore. They gathered there, and then they headed over towards Lexington, where they knew that the British were marching towards Concord. What they ended up doing was they would have gone down Main Street and then onto Pleasant Street. But instead of the fork that we now have going left on Lexington Street and right on Burlington Street, it was only Burlington Street. You went along Burlington Street, they went across the Flag property, past the Flag House, which unfortunately was knocked down a few months ago. That's no longer in existence. But then from Burlington Street, it went to what was Garden Street. Garden Street, it then sort of meandered around to meet up to what is today Lexington Street until you came over here by Cambridge Road. This road actually will come out onto Cambridge Road approximately across the street from where St. Barbara's Church is. It's down a little bit, you know, towards Kentucky Fried Chicken and, you know, those in that area. But it's just in the area of St. Barbara's Church. Loami Baldwin, they of course were marching from Woburn Center in this direction. Okay, so we're going the opposite direction in which they traveled. But you just want to keep in mind that, as I said, this was a well-trained group of militiamen that were heading over. Word had spread a lot in the pre-dawn hours through Paul Revere, who did not go through Woburn, but they all knew, you know, that they needed to assemble. Woburn men were the first outside witnesses. To be honest, when Woburn men arrived at Lexington Green, the battle on the green had already taken place, and it was over, and the British were marching on to Concord. Where the Woburn men set up was an area in Lincoln, which is known as Bloody Angle, and there was a battle there. It's actually where Daniel Thompson from Woburn was killed. They set up there so that after the British were coming back from Concord, Woburn's men were there to fight with them then on the way back, to harass them on their way back as they tried to go towards Boston. But that's how far Colonel Baldwin took them to Lincoln, which is kind of in the area where the Hartwell House is today. There were many casualties that, on the side of the British, and it was at the Bloody Angle where Daniel Thompson was killed. Woburn men pursued them the British back to Lexington, but then it appears that they were relieved by other groups of people who took it from there. So what we're going to see now, the first stop we're going to take is going to be, it's called Aschel and Abigail Porter. And a little background about Aschel. Aschel Porter was the son of William Porter, who was born in Salem. He married Abigail Brooks, the daughter of Captain Timothy and Ruth Wyman Brooks, in 1773. Brooks and Wyman are both old Woburn family names. They were living with Abigail's parents in 1775. They had a son, Aschel, who was only 2 months old. And I'm going to take it from there. We're going to let the actors take it from there. So let's head down and we're going to meet Aschel and Abigail Porter.
Are you certain about this, Aschel? Is it truly more profitable for you to accompany Josiah Richardson all the way to Boston to sell your goods at market? Would you rather not stay here?
Abby, you know as well as I that I bring little enough money to. Besides, I must do something to put food on our table.
But Aschel, your business is here.
My business is little more than a joke, Abby. Heaven knows your father keeps reminding me of that.
Oh, Father only wants what's best for us.
Your father wants what's best for you, Abby. And in his mind, what's best for you is clearly not me. Do you think I don't hear his opinion often enough? He certainly never fails to tell you what a poor choice you made in a husband.
Aschel, please.
He loses no opportunity to remind you what a failure I am as a husband, as a provider, as a businessman. And now that I owe money to Major Baldwin, the dressing down will only get worse.
Oh, do you not think that he considers...
Abby, do you not think it's best for your failure of a husband to remove himself to Boston in hopes of a profit? Oh.
Aschel, listen. Do you think that Father's grievances are my grievances as well? Do you?
Abby,
Oh. I know that Father can speak out of turn, but he's only concerned for our welfare. Yours, mine, and our child's. I hope that you do not think for one moment that I consider you a failure.
Abby.
Oh, hush. If you think it best to accompany Josiah Richardson to Boston with your goods, then by all means do so. But always know that I do not think of you as a poor choice of a husband. You are my dear husband.
Abby, I am sorry. I do not wish to trouble you like this.
Oh, nonsense. You do not trouble me, though perhaps you should.
I beg your pardon. I don't understand.
Perhaps you should trouble me to come to that shop of yours and to display the clothes in a more pleasing manner. I'll wager that I can have everyone from Lexington, Woburn, and Menotomy coming to your shop.
So you would become my business partner, would you?
Am I not your partner in everything? Well, Godspeed, Aschel, and take care on the Boston Road. You'll be riding in the dark.
I know, dearest, but Josiah knows the way well, and he says that the eggs and such will fetch a very fine price. Besides, I don't want to stay there longer than I must. Josiah and his militia boys say that with every passing day the king's troops wear a more warlike face.
Then hurry home to me, Aschel.
I will come back as quickly as that person.
Thank you.
Great. Great. Very nice.
Aschel Porter was captured by the advancing British column in Arlington, which was then known as Menotomy. He was released just before Lexington Green. So he had headed into Boston, was captured by the British as they were returning. They were held by the British as the British advanced on towards Lexington. What happened was, just before the outbreak of all of the hostilities, he was told that they were released. The story says that Aschel Porter was told to walk away, do not run. Unfortunately, for some reason, he ran. He was killed by the British.
Oh.
What happens was he was shot in the back. Was that the first shot heard round the world? No one really knows. But it was one of the first shots that was fired early on that morning as they approached Lexington Green. So he was probably the first to die on Lexington Green. No one knows for sure who fired the shot, the first shot that was known as the shot heard round the world. But the timing was such that it might have been that shot that killed Aishel. His body was hastily buried for fear of desecration by the British, near where he fell. But it was then retrieved later in that day by his friend Josiah Richardson, with whom he had started out the day. It was brought back to Woburn, buried on April 21st, 1775, in what is now known as the first burial ground on Park Street off of Woburn Center. Aishel's name is also on the Lexington Monument on Lexington Green. We're going to move on to the next stop. And on that morning of April 19th, two very well-known patriots found themselves unexpectedly visiting Woburn. Let's listen to Reverend Mr. John Merritt, the pastor of Woburn's second parish, the man that described in his diary what the weather was like for us that day earlier, and Mrs. Reed. They are comparing their experiences of the day.
As I was saying, Mr. Merritt, I'm so pleased you stopped in to see me today.
Indeed, madam.
We have been through quite something, haven't we?
As indeed. You have had prisoners, British prisoners housed in your home. You have had at least a brief visit from Mr. Hancock and Mr. Adams as they were fleeing Lexington.
That was very brief, wasn't it?
It was indeed.
I'm so glad they were able to take refuge in your home eventually. I think they were trying to get to the closest farm they could find after leaving Lexington in quite a rush. I do want to know how the ladies did, though. I believe you also hosted Madam Hancock and Miss Quincy.
And
did they finally make it to your house?
Mr. Hancock's fiancée, Dorothy Quincy, and her Aunt Hancock did come. There's a bit of a story about that. Mr. Hancock and Mr. Adams, when they fled Lexington, they fled in Mr. Hancock's rather elaborate, as you might imagine, rather elaborate and expensive coach.
Yes, so
which
I
you
saw.
recall.
Right, yes. Oh.
Well, what had happened when they finally arrived at the parsonage, to which they had been recommended by my brother Clark in Lexington.
That's right. You and the Clark family are very close.
Indeed.
Yes, as
Indeed.
I know. Yeah.
And my brother Amos is a parishioner in the Hancock parish. So we had them arrive somewhat out of breath in a coach and two, and just as they had arrived, Mr. Hancock took it into his head that he wanted his salmon. Now there's a story about that salmon.
Yes,
I don't know if you know
he
the
was
whole
talking
thing.
about that salmon when he was at my house.
Well,
it seemed to be very much on his mind.
And
now, what was this? Did he ever get his salmon?
When he was at my brother, the answer to that, madam, is both yes and no. When he was at my brother Clark's, an admirer brought him a large, fresh-caught salmon.
Okay.
But before it could be dressed or cooked or any such thing, it was clear that Mr. Hancock and Mr. Adams were going to have to leave and come to the Woburn precinct. So when Mr. Hancock arrived at the parsonage, he decided that he wanted his salmon. So he sent his carriage...
Which doesn't surprise me the way he was going on at my house about it.
Indeed. And so he sent his carriage back to the parsonage in Lexington to collect first, I think, his salmon, second, his fiancée, and third, his aunt.
I see. Oh well. At least they were included in the
Indeed.
package. Yes.
Indeed, and they all arrived safely at the parsonage here in Woburn, and we prepared the salmon. I say we, my good wife, prepared the salmon, and it was to be served with a wonderful meal. And just as we were sitting down, and just as I had invoked grace at the table, a man came rushing into the house to say that the regulars were on their way to Woburn and that we had to flee.
Oh my. Oh yes.
So Mr. Hancock had to leave his salmon behind, having seen it cooked and dressed. And
smelling those aromas, I'm sure.
Oh, indeed. He does love his food, does Mr. Hancock. He is used to the very best of everything.
So I had that impression of him, yes.
Mr. Adams, on the other hand, at least affects to prefer what he calls plain cooking, the simplest possible. Never mind the fact that he is an educated man, a graduate of Harvard College, he nevertheless is so much a part of the Boston, what shall we call them, the Boston mob, that he dresses somewhat shabbily and he eats somewhat shabbily, even though I'm sure if he put his mind to it, he could manage to do better for himself, but he prefers not to.
I see. But not so Mr. Hancock.
No, not so Mr. Hancock.
So they had to leave, and they had to leave this wonderful salmon on the table.
They did indeed. And
where,
they
remind me where they
eventually,
were taken.
I helped to lead them through the woods to the Wyman house.
Yes, all right. There were many women and children who were also heading for the Wyman house.
And Mrs. Wyman managed to feed Mr. Hancock with rye bread and pudding and a much more simple repast than he was anticipating. But we had to, the first thing we had to do was to take his rather, what shall I say, his coach, which was rather hard to disguise,
yes,
and hide it in the
large,
woods.
Yes, and quite colorful.
And at the end of the day, it turned out that the message about the British coming into Woburn was false. That Mr. Hancock could very easily have stayed at our home and enjoyed his salmon. But as it is, he went to the Wymans and enjoyed a far simpler repast.
Well, now I'm assuming that the ladies stayed behind. Perhaps the ladies, Madam Hancock and Miss Quincy,
for the time being,
were the ones
indeed.
to enjoy that salmon after all.
Indeed, they did get to enjoy it, and I imagine that given Miss Quincy's high spirits, that she enjoyed the fact that while she got to enjoy the salmon, Mr. Hancock, her fiancé, did not.
I see.
I
he
am
was
sure
fleeing in the woods again.
Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed.
Well, you know, they are off. They are all off safely to Worcester now. It's good. I think it was wonderful that we were able to give them shelter in a time of need, and it was wonderful to be able to meet them and get to know them a little bit, as I had not before. But luckily they are safe now, and
they are indeed.
We bid
They are
them good voyage.
Well out of harm's way, and soon I understand to leave for Connecticut. As Mr. Hancock and Mr. Adams are on their way to the Continental Congress in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, yes, right, as appropriately. So wonderful. Well, thank you so much for this visit. I was very pleased
Indeed.
to be able to get filled in.
Entirely my pleasure, madam.
Hey, thank you.
Just to point out to you right now, if you look over to your left, you'll see another one of the markers, the walls. Remember that stone walls were used as fences back in the 1700s because wood was used to build homes and heat homes. So they used all of these stones as markers. So that was a marker probably of some, an old property line. As this one is laid out, you can see the stone walls on either side just to mark out the road. The barrier was preserved by John McElhenney a number of years ago when he worked with the developer. Off to your left, however, this is all public land. This is all owned by the city of Woburn. It's about 20 acres over here to the left, and it's called the Battle Road Conservation Area. Long before Woburn's militia mustered that morning, men from the west side of Woburn responded to the alarm. One of them was Sylvanus Wood, who lived at what is now Four Corners. Luckily for us, he wrote two depositions describing what he saw that day. So come ahead, we're going to meet Sylvanus Wood. He was one of the few Woburn militiamen that was actually at Lexington Green that morning. Remember, the rest of the Woburn was coming from Woburn Center, and they did not make it to Lexington Green before the battle.
About an hour before the break of day, I heard the Lexington bell ring, and hearing there was some difficulty there, I took my gun and with Robert Douglas went to Lexington, about 3 miles distant from here. Upon arrival, I inquired of Captain Parker, the commander of the Lexington Company, what was the news?
Well, the news was fast in coming. The British arrived and swept Parker's militia from the common, killing 8 people. In any army march, there are some stragglers. This day, Sylvanus Wood encountered one.
you too. Yes.
When he met Mr. Welch and another person, Sylvanus Wood delivered the prisoner to them. He believed the soldier who surrendered his gun was the first prisoner taken by the Americans on that day.
Have all of you.
Stand your ground, mother. Pops back.
On the basis of this claim of having captured the first prisoner of the Revolutionary War, Sylvanus Wood was granted his federal Revolutionary War pension.
Excellent.
Sylvanus Wood stayed in the service. He rose to the rank of lieutenant in the Continental Army. He later bought the homestead and a 100-acre farm of his April companion, Robert Douglas. Robert Douglas moved to Portland, Maine in 1794. Wood petitioned Congress for a pension for his wartime service and was approved in 1824. He was in the spotlight around that time as the area celebrated the golden anniversary of the fight in 1825. Surviving participants were feted. They were also sought out to provide written depositions of the events as they then recalled them. And that's what Sylvanus Wood, he wrote a couple of depositions so that we know exactly what happened that day to him. He died at the ripe old age of 91 in 1840. He was buried initially, but later reinterred and buried in the new cemetery that opened in 1845 on Salem Street, known today as Woodbrook, which is still in use. Initially, they feel he was buried at the second burial ground, which was behind the Peterson School on Montvale Avenue, and then reinterred when the new cemetery opened in 1845. Okay, this next stop, we're going to meet Benjamin Thompson and a British officer. Benjamin Thompson was born at the home of his grandfather in March of 1753. He showed signs of unusual talent at a young age, such as a skill with mechanical services and a command of language and grammar. He attended science lectures at Harvard University with his friend and his neighbor, Low Army Baldwin. He apprenticed in the importing trade and the study of medicine. At age 19, he became a schoolmaster in Concord, New Hampshire. He married a wealthy widow, Sarah Rolfe, and was now in a position of influence. He was named a major in the 2nd Provincial Regiment by Governor Wentworth. His continued contact with British officers, such as General Gage in Boston, brought him under suspicion by those who were favoring insurrection. Let's meet them.
Blast this captivity, this gentleman's captivity.
Yes, and what look, they've brought more prisoners to cram the
Captain reads out, no, wait a moment. They're not properly dressed. Are they collecting Tories and they're incarcerating them? I might have more civilians. Benjamin Thompson, Esquire.
And Lieutenant Hamilton at your service.
The day started so well, but they've taken me from my mother's sick room, brought me here without reason, unless perhaps you know of one. No one knows we're here, so if you could get word to General Gage to let us know, let him know that.
And especially for me, ladies and gentlemen, my regiment on Castle Island is looking for me. On the 18th, I was out patrolling the countryside looking for Messieurs Hancock and Adams and Revere. And on my way in the area of Concord and Woburn, some ruffians stopped me. And here I am under gentleman's arrest with my dear friend Thompson. I miss the Madeira, St. James in London, the brandy too. How about you, Mr. Thompson?
Well, as I said, I am born in Woburn, so actually not far from what I called home, but haven't been here a number of years because apprenticed to Salem, married a wealthy, well, of course, I believe I'm stealing your lines. My
Okay,
apologies.
well done.
You told them so well already. Married a wealthy widow in Concord, New Hampshire. Took up residence in Portsmouth. But unfortunately, politics can be an unpleasant topic of conversation. And if you're not in agreement with those to whom you are listening and who happen to be more numerous and better armed, they can lay hands on you and make you prisoner.
Blast it, being here as a police force. We're here as a police force, ladies and gentlemen. We're not here as British regulars. We're here to maintain order. What you think, Mr. Thompson?
Unfortunately, it would appear that it's possible the inmates now have control of the asylum.
I agree with you, sir.
Lieutenant. These armed men are surely not militia, because the militia is supposed to be under the orders of the governor, which would be General Gage.
I agree,
so
sir.
I think he has not asked them to do that. How much time have we got, madam? Or do we just keep going until another group comes up and says, time for you all to go?
Whenever you are ready.
Do you potential prisoners or guests, depending upon how you arrived here, have any questions of us that we can perhaps educate you so you don't become guests?
I'm a little curious as to why Mr. Hancock, who was quite wealthy, would decide to side with the revolution rather than with the British. What caused that? Because most people who have a lot of money tend to stay with the powers that be.
Well, he was an opportunist, from what we've heard under General Gage's councils of war. He was profiting without paying proper taxes.
I see. Okay, now I understand.
Being a merchant, you understand, he dealt in goods and services.
Yes.
And, well, as a merchant, you buy cheap and sell dear.
Yes.
And if you have to pay your pittance to the government, that means you didn't buy it quite as cheaply, which means your profit margin is not as great.
I see.
So he is, well, he can sell more cheaply than his competitors.
You've heard of the term rum runner, madam?
Oh, absolutely. It has a lot to do with the way the wind blows.
Well, there's a certain equation with that, with Mr. Hancock.
So does that perhaps answer your question?
Yes.
Another from someone else. Well, then perhaps you can explain to us how you were able to be abroad on this day and we are confined and you are free.
Yes.
Perhaps you could explain that, so perhaps that Mr. Reed, whose guests we are, will come to understand that we're free like you are. Anybody?
The proper rights of Englishmen all. We all enjoy those, except for those that harbor ill will towards the king.
For no good reason.
I agree, sir.
Unless perhaps someone knows of a good reason.
Whatever we say is going to get us in trouble, so I think...
Yeah.
Please, madam, since I only know your name as madam, I cannot put a name to anything that you should say to higher authorities. Enlighten us! Enlighten Mr. Reed!
Pass.
I'm sorry, Captain Reed. Although maybe I should say Mr. Reed. I don't think he holds the King's commission.
I agree with you,
Yeah,
sir.
right.
I agree with you.
So the source of the taxes were basically funding an entirely different war that King George was having with France?
You are on the right track, but a little bit of the wrong period, madam. You colonists had a thing called the French and Indian War.
Oh, yes. I knew there was
You know
something
who
going
picked
on.
up a tab for that? His Majesty's government, not the locals.
Yeah.
So we would like to get a little repaid for that. So when you complain about the Stamp Act, which only affects your legal class, not every individual, your legal class, you're barking up the wrong tree.
To be fair, the colonists were fighting for expansion, but in the end, the British put a stop on it and said, don't go past this line, because even though you guys have fought so hard and died for this land, we're not going to let you keep it.
Well, no. You may keep what you have, but what you were proposing to do was to move west into the lands of other citizens of His Majesty's government.
And who would those be?
The Native Americans.
Yes.
who are English subjects, just
Yes,
subjects of His
concur.
Majesty as much as you.
Interesting.
But true.
as much as you, but we weren't considered subjects at the time. We were just colonists.
Well,
We were-
subjects in that you.
We
your
weren't. We
king-
weren't Englishmen.
I'm sorry?
We weren't Englishmen. We were.
Oh,
colonists.
but you are Englishmen. You are provincials to be sure, but and men in England are not the only Englishmen. Men,
Not the way to
Englishmen
the crown,
in
though.
India, Englishmen in the Caribbean,
Yes.
Englishmen in Gibraltar.
I agree, sir.
The sun never sets.
Wait for it. Wait for it. And you know, why does the sun never set on the British Empire?
Because the British Empire.
No. It was, who was it? If I were to speculate, who was that man's name? Gandhi. That was it. The sun never sets on the British Empire because God doesn't trust the English in the dark. But.
I love this man's wit. His wit is.
Were I to
first rate.
speculate, however, we don't say that in polite company because His Majesty might not take it in the spirit in which it is said, which is, you think it was humorous, he might think otherwise. But we were speaking to your question of,
Yes.
you wish to, you want more land. Well, unfortunately, the land that you seem to want to acquire already belongs to someone else. But, so, force of arms.
Wait, are these the same Indians that fought against us in the French and Indian War?
Some.
Not all. There were some who are good and loyal allies of His Majesty.
So why couldn't we work together? Because the French were able to establish good relationships with the Native Americans. Why couldn't the English do the
Possibly
same?
because the French didn't have this great rapacity to acquire property that their English cousins did. So the Native Americans looked on both sides as, who is more interested in our lands when this is all over? Perhaps they're right.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you.
He actually came back to America to lead the British troops during the Revolutionary War. He achieved, however, significant fame in Bavaria as an administrator. He transformed the city of Munich into a thriving center of commerce and beauty with a famous English garden. He wiped out the begging problem that they had in their city, and for his accomplishments, he was made a Count of the Holy Roman Empire. He was known thereafter as Count Rumford, and the Count Rumford house is up in North Woburn, the home that he was born in. It's right on, just off of Main Street. Elm Street, that's the one. I was going to say Pearl. Thank you for that.
Statue in front of the library.
I'm getting to that. Give me a second, okay? He also achieved significant fame as an inventor and as a scientist, particularly in the fields of conservation and the transfer of heat conservation and the transfer of energy. He designed a Rumford fireplace and a host of other inventions and improvements in everyday life. He was considered a great scientific mind of his day. Following the Revolutionary War, he lived out the rest of his life in Europe, never returning to America. However, Colonel Low Army Baldwin, who led the Woburn militia, remained his friend for the rest of his life. At one point, Colonel Baldwin's Baldwin Mansion that's up in North Woburn, he actually bought what is known as the 1790 house, which is in sort of that little Baldwin Middlesex Canal Park in North Woburn. He bought that home hoping that someday Count Rumford would return and that his friend would live, that close to him again. So there were two people that grew up, went in completely different directions, and always remained friends. After Count Rumford lived out his life, he did die in 1814, and he died in Paris. He's buried there just outside of Paris. There is a statue of him for all of his scientific accomplishments just outside of the Woburn Public Library. It's right on the lawn of the Woburn Public Library. That was erected in 1900. There is an identical statue erected in Munich, Germany. The one in Woburn is a copy of the one that was erected in Munich, Germany. Now at this point, we're going to all walk back out together to the Taki site. And we just want to let you know that the Taki School, where the old Taki School is, where we met initially this morning, it was when the Minutemen on April 19th from Woburn got to just about that Taki site, that's when they heard the first volley of shots from Lexington Green. So you can imagine how all of a sudden they were hurrying from there over to Lexington Green. As I said, they did arrive about 20 minutes after the battle, but they are considered the first witnesses to all that had taken place there. And as I said, they did not continue on to Concord. They stopped in, Colonel Baldwin stopped his militia in Lincoln, and that's where they engaged the British on their return to Boston. Any questions that anyone has, I'll be happy to try to answer them for you.
I had a Boy Scout question.
Oh, I'll get one of those too. Yes.
Waters, if anybody needs it.
Yes, there are waters back at the
Does
Taki.
anybody
Oh,
need
you
it?
have some in your backpack?
Yes.
If anyone would like a water, they have them with them right now. Thank you. I didn't realize that.
They're Boy Scouts, they're prepared.
They are.
That's
They
right.
certainly
They're
are prepared. Thank you. But I
I'll
just
take one,
wanted
thank you.
to thank
Marjorie,
everyone
do
for
you want?
coming, for participating. And you know, we want to thank the Woburn Historical Commission. We want to thank Ren for clearing this area so that we could actually walk down it. And the National Park Service's Freedom's Way Hidden Treasures program, which is what this is a part of. It's something that's taking place this weekend in all cities and towns across the Commonwealth that chose to participate. There's more information on all of those back at the Taki School site underneath the tent. But once again, thank you all for coming, and if you have any questions, happy to entertain.
Good job.
Thank you. Watch your step as we're walking backwards.
Yeah.